Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're discussing the Emperor of Mankind and Lion L. Johnson, as we ask how the Lion may wish to deal with the God Emperor's Ascension. General spoiler warning to begin, as today we will be referencing events from across the Warhammer 40k universe, as well as specifically the novel The Lion, Son of the Forest by author Mike Brooks. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. So last week we discussed the topic of how Lord Commander Guilliman will move forward with his father's awakening, asking if now is the time we will see him truly begin to harness the weapon of faith upon the battlefield. If you haven't seen that last upload yet, I recommend going back and giving that one a listen before continuing with this. I'll drop a link to it in the corner. Now, the premise of that conversation was, though it's clear Guilliman despises the Imperium's religious worship of his father, it had really reached a point where he could no longer deny his father had indeed become something more than he was. Within the final installment of the Dark Imperium trilogy, Godblight, we saw militant apostolic Matthew tasked with delivering a message to Guilliman from the Emperor, or at least so Matthew believed. There, upon his deathbed, kept alive beyond any medical means, Matthew informed Guilliman that the Emperor was indeed awakening in power, that he had orchestrated the pieces over the centuries so Guilliman himself might return, and that now he needed Guilliman's help to step down from the Golden Throne. Then later, in private conversation with the Call Inferior, Belisarius Call's totally not wink wink nod nod AI machine, Guilliman not only admitted he is forced to accept the Emperor is moving and acting across the galaxy, but he also asked Call if he thought the Emperor could be resurrected, as he himself had been. So it's clear, in one form or another, the topic of the Emperor leaving the Golden Throne is upon Guilliman's mind. And so on Friday, we discussed whether this could finally lead to Guilliman embracing the Imperium's faith, or worship of the Emperor, not because he believed it, but to fuel the faith in his father across the armies and people of mankind, to empower the Emperor to the point he can once again leave the Golden Throne. Or if instead he would seek to restore the Emperor to life, to remove this element of godhood entirely, eliminating this realm he simply can't understand. I think it's very possible Guilliman could seek to remove this godhood aspect of his father by trying to restore him to life. But if he is to embrace the other line of thinking, in trying to empower the Emperor through embracing and harnessing the Imperium's faith, it could well come within Imperium Nihilus, where he witnesses the atrocities of the ruinous powers, and the miracles of faith that has enabled worlds to hold out amid the dark. However, the wildcard factor was Lion L. Johnson, the return of Guilliman's brother. For surely the matter of their father's apotheosis and actions, not to mention the eradication of the Imperial truth, would be high on their list of talking points when eventually reunited. So how is this going to go? How is the Lion going to feel about it all? Well, at this point we obviously don't know for sure. However, thanks to the novel The Lion, Son of the Forest, we do perhaps have some clues. Now, the first and perhaps biggest comes from the Lion's first reunion with one of his sons, the fallen knight Zabriel, who would go on to become the first of the Lions Redeemed. Here, the Primarch would ask his one-time legionary for the current state of the galaxy. Zabriel, the Lion says seriously, "I must know our situation. What of the Imperium? What of my brothers? What of my legion?" Zabriel snorts a laugh that is without humour. Where to begin? An exact date is difficult to ascertain, even for someone who has been counting the passage of time for 4 centuries. The Emperor remains interred upon the Golden Throne, or so his subjects believe. I certainly cannot say for sure one way or the other. He is worshipped as a god. He is what? Zabriel shrugs wearily. The Imperial Creed, the Ecclesiarchy, is just as fanatical now as the word-bearers were in our day. Only they have the full power of the Imperium behind them now. To deny the Emperor's divinity is to be sentenced to death. I believe most Space Marines have some clemency on the issue, but I have had little opportunity to engage any in conversation. Every person around you considers him a god, and I simply keep my own counsel on the matter. The Lion closes his eyes. I asked myself in the aftermath of the Siege of Terror whether the so-called victory was worth the cost. Now I wonder if we won at all. He opens them again. How did my brothers allow this? The Lion's immediate reaction there, the moment Zabriel mentions the Emperor being worshipped as a god, to interrupt incredulously, "He is what?" It's the exact reaction you would expect from any of the loyal Primarchs. The Emperor himself denied any semblance of divinity or godhood. For all his abilities, for all his power, he instructed the Primarchs in the Imperial truth. The very premise of the Great Crusade was to unite humanity under this belief, to ultimately free them of any dependency on the warp, and to thus defeat the ruinous powers. Lion L. Johnson led his legion from one side of the galaxy to the other. He conquered worlds, systems, sectors. He faced down empires and stood loyal when his own brothers fell. All in the name of the Emperor. His quest, his vision, his dream for mankind. And I don't think anything can sum up L. Johnson's sheer disbelief and disappointment more than his own words here. I asked myself in the aftermath of the Siege of Terror whether the so-called victory was worth the cost. Now I wonder if we won at all. Eerily similar to Guilliman's own reaction upon his return. "What more do you want from me? I gave everything I had to you, to them. Look what they've made of our dream. This bloated, rotting carcass of an empire is not driven by reason and hope, but by fear, hate, and arrogance. Better that we had all burned in the fires of Horus's ambition than lived to see this." The two brothers undoubtedly shared the same initial reaction to the Imperium around them, even if L. Johnson was yet to truly see it for himself. And so, from this initial reaction, I think it's safe to assume the Lion's thinking would be fairly similar to Guilliman's, and there is some evidence of that similarity later. Certainly, the Lion could have railed at these developments. He could have attempted to mould what he found back into the Imperium as his father had intended it to be, even though that was a dream which had never been achieved before it fell apart. Instead, He recognised that Kamarth was already too brittle to be forced into anything but the most basic functionality. He neither acknowledged nor raged at claims of his own divinity, even though I could tell he was repulsed by the notion, and he made no comment about the Imperial Creed. There was a certain flexibility to him now, a pragmatism that had perhaps not always been there before, and with that came a greater awareness of those he considered it his duty to protect. Now, this bears hallmarks to Guilliman's cooperation with the Ecclesiarchy. Guilliman, despite being repulsed at the Imperial Creed and the religious fervour that had consumed the Imperium, realised that the only chance he had to save the Empire, the very race of mankind and the galaxy, was to simply face the greater threat, the ruinous powers. And Guilliman was, and is, a little more vocal on his displeasure and lack of belief than we see from L. Johnson here, but it fits the same form of logic. They may have fallen from the Emperor's dream, but they are still humanity. However, there is one big difference for L. Johnson here, in that at this point, he didn't know his father still lived, and in actual fact, was acting on the assumption he wasn't, until proven otherwise. Later, during his efforts to protect what worlds of humanity he could, the Lion does indeed find out the Emperor still lives upon the throne, during a battle against one of his traitor fallen sons. Here, a fallen named Seraphax not only informed his Primarch the Emperor still lived, but that he believed the Emperor needs to die to truly ascend to godhood within the warp, where he could then defeat the ruinous powers. And surprisingly, while the Lion doesn't think his father is a god, he admits and reflects in his faults. The term does fit, that the Emperor is so powerful, he can understand how he could be described as a god. And while this line of thinking isn't something out of the ordinary or something we've never seen before at all, I do think it's particularly noteworthy for Lion L. Johnson, and could well be the beginning of him understanding and thinking of their father in terms of more than the man he was. Chances are it's more likely going to tie in to the Star Child narrative, which we've seen reintroduced with the Dawn of Fire series. However, could it come into play if Guilliman does indeed discuss the state of their father with L. Johnson? The answer is categorically yes. Even though it's very brief, this line of thinking for me certainly doesn't make it impossible to see the Lion accepting the Emperor could well be acting out across the galaxy. And again, though he could well inform Rabute of what Seraphax had told him, the Emperor's death being the key to his true ascension, it could also open the door to the Lion wanting to empower their father as Matthew informed Guilliman, through the faith of his armies. Thus, when the conversation is had, I don't think the Lion will be as shocked as he might otherwise have been, and indeed could surprise his brother even further by wanting to help their father grow stronger. Rather than finding an L. Johnson who is entirely repulsed by the idea, Guilliman could well be finding a Lion who is already open to the idea. If not via the Star Child narrative, then perhaps by harvesting the faith of the Imperium. Guilliman's news of saints, the Emperor acting, possessing and saving him, could well be all the Lion needs to hear, to know he has to help his father. No, Lion L. Johnson does not believe the Emperor is a god. but he does believe he's about as powerful as anything can be to be described as one. And, as in the Crusade, he will do whatever he has to do to serve the Emperor, to help his father. Because now more than ever, loyalty is its own reward. But as always everyone, what do you think? How do you think the Primarch's discussion on the topic of their father is going to go? Is Guilliman going to be surprised to find a lion who, yes, is disgusted by this Imperial creed, but is not quite as aghast at the notion of their father becoming something more, and that in all likelihood is not surprised to hear he has been acting across the galaxy? What direction do you feel the brothers will take with the Emperor? Will we indeed see them wanting to empower him to leave the Golden Throne via emboldening the faith of his armies, as Matthew informed Guilliman? Or could we see this twist towards the Star Child theory? I don't know about you, but I absolutely cannot wait for this conversation between the reuniting brothers. There is so much to discuss. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. Oh, I can't wait. But as always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.